Welcome to the Write the Damn Book Already podcast. My name is Elizabeth Lyons. I'm a 6-time author, and I help people write and publish powerful, thought-provoking nonfiction and memoir without any more overthinking, second-guessing, or overwhelm than absolutely necessary. Because let's face it, some overthinking, second-guessing, and overwhelm is going to come with the territory if you're anything like me. I believe that story and shared perspective is one of the most potent ways we connect with one another, and that your story, perspective, and insights are destined to become someone else's favorite resource. For more book writing, publishing, and how the heck do I move through this glitch tips and solutions, and plenty of free and low-cost resources, visit publishaprofitablebook.com. And for recommendations of fabulous books you've possibly never heard of, book writing inspiration, and the occasional meme so relatable you'll wonder if it was created with you in mind, follow me on Instagram at Elizabeth Lyons Author. Okay, this episode of Write the Damn Book Already is another great one. I had the incredible pleasure of speaking with Kristen McGuiness. And Kristen, to say Kristen has been around a while is an understatement, and it's a huge compliment. I mean, she's been in the publishing space, starting in the traditional world, since she was 22 years old. She began her career working in publicity for St. Martin's Press, and after that, she joined the editorial departments of Simon & Schuster, Free Press, and Judith Regan at HarperCollins. Since then, she's become the co-founder, vice president, and editor-at-large of Row House, which is a disruptive publishing imprint at the intersection of wellness and social justice. And most recently, she's founded her own publishing house, Rise Books, which is a boutique traditional publishing house. And it also has a hybrid publishing arm, Ascent Publishing. She's the author of the best-selling 5150, The Magical Adventures of a Single Life. And as a book developer and editor, she's worked with the likes of Dr. Phil, Dr. Stephen Covey, and Chris Matthews. Her debut novel, Live Through This, comes out in October of this year, 2023. I personally cannot wait. And this was such a great conversation because as so many, if not all, frankly, of my guests are, she was so forthcoming and transparent about her experience in the publishing world, what she loves about it, what she doesn't love so much, why she decided to open her own publishing house, how she is hoping to further help authors get the word out, get their words out, and then also get the word out about their books. All of the links to everything Kristen McGuiness, from her programs to her books to her publishing houses, I have put in the show notes, so please feel free to reference those, her social media, just the whole thing. Anywhere you want to find Kristen, you can find her through the episode notes. Let's just bring along the interview. So I found out, this is such an interesting string of events. I found out about you a while ago from Jen Pastiloff, and I've never met Jen Pastiloff, but I follow her. You know, she's one of those people where I'd like run into her in an airport and be like, oh my God, I follow you on Instagram. We're great friends. Anyway, she had posted when you were starting Rise, or when you were I think it was when you were starting and you were doing the Kickstarter.
Okay. Yeah. That was for the publishing house. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. So then I was super intrigued. I was like, what is this? Because having had such a background in traditional and then forming what I would call like a boutique traditional that's more author focused and partnership focused, that excites me to no end. Because can we please bridge the gap between and I don't know if I should say this publicly, but it's Simon & Schuster or nothing. Like, can we just bridge the gap between these big guys over here or nothing? And I run a hybrid house. And so then I saw that you've got Ascent Publishing.
Yeah.
So you've got your traditional branch and then you've got your hybrid arm.
Yes.
And I was just like, and you've got your book coming out. And so I just wanted to hear all the things.
It is a lot, I'll be honest. No, it is. It's super. I mean, we're in it right now. And yet it's weird. I keep saying, I feel like I'm in like the eye of the storm and the storm is approaching. Like the storm still hasn't hit yet. So I sort of feel like a meteorologist who's like, it's coming. And then I'm like, but is it? I mean, I don't know.
Right.
So it's because I'm just kind of like moving through the to-do list of doing all these things, not necessarily at once. So, I mean, I started I mean, I will say I started in traditional book publishing. That was like my first job out of college was working.
Oh, it was?
Yes. I worked publicity for St. Martin's Press. And then I got into editorial at Simon & Schuster. And then I actually left for a few years and I went and worked in Hollywood film development. And then I came back and had a brief, but very like career defining stint working for Judith Regan at Regan Books, which was actually her last like big, I mean, she's gone on to do, I would say, way more boutique publishing, but it was definitely like, I was there during the O.J. Simpson book, which was sort of what tanked her career, at least at Harper. So, and then I myself left book publishing for a few years. I got into the world of nonprofits because I needed to recover. And
yeah.
So, and also fate, just like I got a temp job and it put me in a nonprofit. And then the next thing I knew,
But I love that. Okay. Because can we talk about that for a minute?
Yes.
Like, because going from something that people perceive as being way up here, and for people who are listening, like my hand is way up in the air, you know, like Harper and Simon & Schuster and all these things, and then to go temp.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? Like, I want people to hear more about people who do that.
Yeah. Oh no, I have gone temp so many times when I felt like I was on the top of a mountain like a month prior.
Really?
So many times. I mean, I'm grateful that I have not had to go temp in, let's see, how old is my daughter? I think that was like around like about maybe 10 years ago, 9 years ago. But I had my first book. I mean, literally, I had my first book come out. And I was on the Today Show. It was featured in USA Today. I was an LA Times bestseller. I had Alison Brie attached to star. We were like, I was going to meetings at Original Films, which is the house of Fast and Furious. So you can imagine what their offices look like. And I was meeting with this, I was meeting with like Alison Brie and this Emmy-nominated producer, Vivian Cannon, who's amazing. She was one of the creators of The Big C. And then Abe Sylvia, who is a very big writer-director himself. And then I would literally leave and go to a temp job, like working in like corporate realty. But so it was.
This is fantastic.
So I've had so many of those, like, I am like, and then like going to some cool thing at night, but during the day, I mean, I am literally like a secretary.
But was it because it wasn't making ends meet the way that people perceive that it was, or was it a personal choice that you wanted to do something different?
It was not for research.
I didn't know. Was it for a book? You needed to know like how this goes down.
I should at one point. I mean, I've had a lot of crazy temp jobs. No, I mean, I had to pay the bills, you know, and no, the meetings with Alison Brie did not pay, right? I mean, they're awesome, but I think my option on my book was $4,000, like my TV and film option. Now, had we sold it, you know, there's life rights and purchase price and, you know, episodic fees, and I would have been fine. I would not have been temping any longer, but none of that had yet to happen, nor did it end up happening. So in that moment, and in many moments in life, you know, it can look really cool on the outside, but it's not really paying the bills, you know? Yeah. And so, but yeah, that's how I ended up in nonprofits. Years prior to that exciting moment, I had come off of working for Judith Regan, and I knew at that point I really didn't want to work in TV and film. I wanted to be a writer. I didn't love film development. It's a lot. It's really like, you have to love it. And
that's a good summary. For a lot of things, by the way, it's a lot.
It's a lot. And I worked with awesome people. I mean, I always say, like, I think that TV and film gets a bad rap because there's like a few really loud people who give it this obnoxious reputation, but actually most of the people working in it are just like normal humans who like really, they're like creative and they love, you know, entertainment, and that's it. And they're just like normal people living normal lives, and they go to normal jobs that, you know, can look, again, really fancy on the outside, but it's like everybody parks on P2, right? So like, it's not like
everybody parks on P2.
Yeah.
That's the quote of the episode so far.
So, yeah. So, But you have to really love it. And I feel that way about books. I mean, that's always been my passion.
Yeah.
I was not a kid who grew up watching like tons of movies. I liked movies just like any old other person, but my jam was books. And so I always felt like that's a career I would sacrifice, 100 hours a week for. But TV and film, I didn't love enough to sacrifice 100 hours a week for. And then, yeah, I mean, there's obviously personalities and, snaky people and all that. But
Sure.
I think you can find that at Starbucks, right? I mean, you can find that in any job, in any industry.
Definitely find that at Starbucks. Yeah.
Yeah. So I know I have friends who work at Starbucks, and there is definitely
my daughter worked there for 6 years.
Yeah.
And you can also find life affirming joy in Starbucks in the form of a 16-ounce cup with, vanilla sweet cream, cold foam. But yeah.
Totally. No, it goes both ways. I mean, you could find and you can find the same thing at CAA, right? So it's like there's great, joyous, amazing people, and then there's, snaky people who will take you out, and so I just didn't feel like I wanted to navigate those waters, and I needed a job, and I ended up temping at a nonprofit. That was a great joy of my life. I loved those years at that nonprofit. I wrote my first book while working there. It was centerpiece to the story of really recovery is a part of my story. And I was getting sober, and I worked with children in that job. And it was a really special time. I'm still friends with the children who are now grown adults. And I really got to see the best of what nonprofit work is. And I wrote a book while doing it. And then that book came out, and I thought it would make me, rich and famous, or at the very least able to pay my bills. And then I found out what most writers find out when their books come out, is that, oh, wait, this doesn't pay.
Right. Oh, this isn't what I expected.
Totally.
It's like when Megan Tady's book Super Bloom came out, and then I think she got another one, and her friend said, so now you can buy, she lives up in the Northeast, so now you can buy your house on the Cape. And she was like, not really.
Yeah. She's like, I could get a hotel room for a couple of nights.
Yeah, it's not. So what then, what made you want to start your own? Not stay or go back to the traditional world, but do it on your own and do it in this unique way. What was that all about for you?
I think, I got into the world of ghostwriting and then into the world of book coaching, because that was just sort of a natural, having worked in traditional book publishing, having ghostwritten a lot of books. I began to coach people in doing book proposals and also coaching them during full manuscripts, which is some of my favorite work. I love full manuscript coaching. And I'd been a professional editor for a very long time. And so I'd helped a couple of friends launch their own publishing houses, because they were other authors who, had platforms and were looking to do, one was doing a hybrid, the other did a traditional. And I joked I was like the Nate Parker in both of them. I knew the mechanics of book publishing, so I could bring that to the table. But simultaneously, I had my own book coaching company. And I think I was finding what a lot of book coaches do find, was that I would have these amazing authors who were not going to get the Simon & Schuster deal. And I loved how you said that, because I think a lot of people think that's the prize. And it might be for a few, but it's not for the many. And so I have this now. One of the resources we offer our authors is like a list of independent publishing houses to go out to, and who you can approach beyond agents and sort of the big guys. But I recognize that I sort of knew best on how to publish these folks. I sort of had all the experience, but also I had the intimacy of their story and really believing in their work. And so about 2 years ago now, almost, one of our first authors whose book is coming out in April, actually, it's called The Three Things. And the author's name is Maggie Boxey, and she's an amazing woman. And she was working on her book. But at the time, she had a brain tumor, and she was going to have surgery in May on the tumor. And this was probably January. I'm not January of, I don't even know where we are. Once we get into
right, where are we? When you said that, I thought
2021, 2022. I don't know. Throw them in a.
I'm right there with you.
blender.
I thought, where are we right now? So where are we though? We're in September, right?
Yeah, I know. I think it's 2023, but we'll have to double check a calendar.
Right.
So she was gonna be getting her surgery, and she said, just promise me, if it doesn't go well, that you help me to get this book published. And I said, Maggie, whether it goes well or it doesn't go well, we're publishing your book. And like in that moment, Rise Books was sort of born, because I knew I was determined. I was like, then I will just publish it. And I had a bunch of other, as part of my writing workshops, we have a weekly writers meeting. And so there was a really lovely community that had grown out of that. And a few of those people had been actively working on their books and were very they had done like a workshop with me and then had continued to really work on it. And so I reached out to a few of those folks, and we began to curate our first year list. And then I reached out to a couple private clients who had gone out and were struggling to either get an agent or a publishing deal. And I said, hey, would you like to join? And that's how it really began. So we do accept submissions from folks that aren't necessarily in the writers community, but we give sort of preference to those that have come through Rise Writers. But I didn't want to stop myself from getting like an amazing proposal or being connected with an amazing author and not be able to, and have this sort of self-inflicted rule that I had made. And so I want to be able to offer first look to folks that have come through either the private or group coaching, but also be open to other people that are, looking for and I use the term boutique as well, for a boutique independent publisher who can, can't offer the same advance that they're going to obviously get from a big guy, but who can offer them a lot more profit share and a lot more focus and a lot more commitment.
Well, and it's interesting because my friend Neely Alexander, who's published through Harper Perennial, she had an interesting perspective one day. She said, a small advance isn't necessarily a bad thing, because then either way, you've got to hopefully earn it out, but you can earn out a small advance more quickly. And if you're working in a more intimate environment in partnership with your publisher, which just makes it more, of course, fun, but also you just don't feel like just a number where if the book doesn't do well, that's the end of that.
Yeah.
You've kind of got this home for your book and for yourself as an author. And I so resonate with what you're saying about when you coach people and they're writing and you think, this is probably not going to sell to a big house because it's memoir or because they don't have a huge platform or all of the above, or it's essay. But it's so impactful. I've read things that have stopped me.
Yes.
And I think this can't not go. I can't be the only person in the world that this is going to stop in her tracks. This can't not go into the world because it's not green lit by some big conglomerate that believes it can make millions of dollars or whatever it may be. So, yeah.
It's hard. And it's hard when you feel like this really has a space out there and has the power to change people or help people or inspire people. A lot of our books are really rooted in activism or, propel people towards activism or give them a blueprint for it. And then, that's just they're not going to find a home. Or if they find, and then as somebody who is interested in hybrid publishing, or you send them out into a world where there unfortunately are a lot of people who can take advantage of somebody trying to write a book, and then they're going to end up selling 25 copies on Amazon.
It's awful.
Yeah,
it's awful. I don't get on a soapbox about a lot of things, and the reason I get on a soapbox about this is because I'm so passionate. It kind of happened to me 19 years ago when I published my first book. I went with a hybrid who was more of a vanity than a hybrid. And things didn't go great. And I extricated myself quickly. And ever since then, that's when I started my publishing house. It was just for me at the time. I never intended to publish anybody else, but I finally got to the point where I realized I can do this with integrity. I know how to do it and I can do it with integrity. And the number of people, Kristen, I know you've heard it too, who get taken for tens of thousands of dollars
Yeah.
and just don't, and they're smart people.
Yeah.
And they just don't know what questions to ask. And so they end up kind of in this mess.
Yeah. Yeah, they end up with a book that they don't know how to sell, and they don't have any of the resources or bandwidth. I mean, if they had the massive platform, they would have gotten the book deal, right? So like, they just kind of like, there's a reason why a book publisher isn't investing in someone, because they don't think they can sell the books.
Right.
And so, and I've, and as I know, I mean, publishers will take on books that don't have huge platforms because they really believe in that book, but they just have so few of those slots available that it's like, like I say, I mean, I worked in book publishing prior to social media, and then sort of at its advent. And, back then, you basically, if you had 10 slots available, 6 would go to household names, but 4 were for like amateurs. And now it's like 9 go to household names or people with big platforms, and only 1 is for the amateur, so, which is why, I mean, we have Ascend, which people do pay fees to be published. But one of the things, there's 2 points to it that make it really different, is that one, we have distribution and sales with Simon & Schuster, which is very rarely offered at most hybrid or vanity presses. And so we are actually able to sell and distribute your book beyond KDP and, and Amazon. Right. And so, but the other thing is that in each of our packages, we have publicity and marketing built in. It's not an option. And the reason why is because we actually have to sell copies through Simon & Schuster. We can't put that out there, have them do the work to sell it and distribute it, and then have an author who doesn't know or isn't able to show up for the publicity and marketing, who can't put that huge plan together and execute it, and then sell 50 copies, because we actually are on the line to sell copies. And so I think it does make it really different, because a lot of times a publisher and a vanity press isn't incentivized to actually sell copies. They've made their money. They're done, and it's like, well, you go do whatever you're going to do with it. And for us, that's not the case. We are actually invested in the book, even if the author's making the financial investment. We are invested in actually seeing sales, and we actually provide a P&L that shows this is how many copies you need to make in order to make your money back, right? Which I understand that for a lot of times people aren't necessarily interested in like huge profit. They're trying to get it out there for platform building and for promotion and for their business. But we at least want to set them up in a way that they know that there is like an easy number that they can attain to make it worth their investment. But the PR and marketing to us is just it's imperative, because otherwise you're not going to sell copies unless you already have those resources or
in place.
Yeah.
So I'm really curious about this, because I've heard about the Simon & Schuster distribution. So for me as a hybrid house, right, I pretty much cut the cord, not in my relationship with my authors, but in my responsibility. So I don't do any PR and marketing. And the reason why is it's not my lane. Yeah. I feel like it would be so out of integrity to charge people because I'm still trying to figure out my marketing. Yeah. So I find that, we find them a publicist if they want, or we do all that, but they do it separately from me. I just cut the cord in terms of earnings. Like I don't take a percentage of earnings because I'm not doing anything past that point. Yeah. And I never understand when a vanity publisher charges an author up front and then holds a percentage, especially when they charge a really high number, like $15K up front, and then they retain 20% on the back end, and they're not really doing any publicity. Yeah. So I'm curious about the Simon & Schuster. How does that work differently from, say, uploading to Ingram Spark and being available through Ingram?
So Ingram provides distribution, but Simon & Schuster actually provides sales. So we have sales conference with a sales team at Simon & Schuster, who then go and take our books and sell them indirectly to buyers. So when I have sales conference with Simon, I am there with the sales rep for Amazon, the sales rep for B&N, the sales rep for specialty shops, the sales rep for independents. There's about 20 people on that call that I am pitching out to, that I am providing them with materials for. I am doing all concerns almost every week to that group of to that sales force. And so then on the distribution end, I'm able to actually get the books I can get them into B&N proper. I can get them into specialty shops. I can get them into independent booksellers. That isn't, it's not on me to manage the sales. Simon does that for us.
Right.
So, and they are phenomenal. I mean, they're a well-oiled. I mean, I always say I don't, and I actually, I have a monthly meeting with my rep at Simon, who we go over everything. We go over all of my materials that I have uploaded, what sales needs. We track anything that's going on with the book and what I can do to strengthen it. And so that is, I mean, it's really priceless. And then we have a really good deal with Simon. A lot of distribution also takes a huge chunk away from people. So when I was looking, because I have a relationship with Simon and Schuster, and I didn't know that they would. I had set up a deal with Row House Publishing and Simon, and I presumed they would offer me the same deal. It seemed kind of silly. It's like, my contact's like, no, but not for you. So would have been like, thanks.
Right.
But I didn't
heard
know.
you were temping back in the day. So
exactly, totally. Go back to corporate realty.
Right.
So I began to look around and I was like, oh my gosh, like some distribution is like 30%. I mean, it's wild. So we pay much reduced. Okay. And we do, on our Ascent clients, we do take 10%, but really that's just to actually offset that Simon and Schuster fee. And we, but we also, I mean, the other piece of it, and this was the idea of having two. This was the idea of like, I think that, you know, I'd experienced a vanity publisher who did very well financially. The company itself did very, very well. The costs for the books were high. Ghostwriting was involved. And it was the same thing. Like once their book was published, they took it and they did whatever they did with it. There was access to a publicist, but that wasn't part of the package. And that wasn't, it was part of the package, but it wasn't like an in-house PR team.
Exactly. Yes.
There wasn't in-house sales and distribution. And so what I realized, and then on the other side, I've worked with an independent publisher who is struggling financially, right? Because it's expensive to make books, like really expensive. And by the time you're done paying all your costs, like you're not getting a lot back. And then on top of it, there's a cash flow issue of you have to pay to print and you don't see that money for 6 months. So, I mean, we're in a cash crunch right now at Rise Books that I'm just, every day is like, I think I'm getting through. I mean, I don't know.
And I don't love hearing it, but I love hearing it because this is the aspect of all of it that nobody talks about, right? Yeah. Not everyone, but the vast majority show the highlight reel of, we just made $17 quadrillion yesterday, but they don't mention that they spent 16.5 quadrillion on ads. So they only took home 50 quadrillion, you know, and it's like, and then it's like, and I can teach you how to do it for $9.99. I mean, it's crazy. And I want to be clear that if the hybrid house is truly working on behalf of the author post-publication, I think it's completely fair to keep a percentage.
Yeah.
It's just the instances that I've heard of, and usually they're with vanity presses, that the vanity press will take literally anything that comes across their desk. I mean, if you've written 17 words and you want to pay them $15,000 to publish it, they'll do it. Yeah. And then they will cut that cord at the end and it's a nightmare. But they'll still keep 25% of your non-sales because you're going to sell zero.
Exactly.
But nevertheless,
copies that you sold to your friends and family. Yeah.
Yes. But it's perfectly, I mean, for you to be providing that service, so you're doing that for Rise and for Ascent. They all have.
They have the same mechanics. It's literally, they have the same director of publicity and marketing. They have the same editorial director. They have the same production team. We use an amazing company, Newworth and Associates, who I can't say, who I think hate me every day. And I love them in return, you know, because it is, you know, when you're just getting going, there's just so much and everything is on a time crunch. So production is a very stressful endeavor, but yeah, no, we have. So, I mean, that's really was the idea that like, here's one, it's a little bit of a Robin Hood, right? That like, there's a way to create revenue for the publishing house. And that's why Ascend is actually technically an imprint of Rise Books. In our Simon & Schuster portal, so to speak, you know, we have, but they function the exact same way. They have the same teams, the same mechanics. It's just one is for a very specific set of books and interests. That's a small curated list for Rise Books that we don't do traditional wellness, business, personal development. We do one memoir a year. A lot of our books are connected to social justice, activism. I mean, really, it's an odd combination, but, I always want to do one parenting book a year. I always want to do one book about recovery a year. But really that they're books that inspire, political, cultural, and social activism. And that's what those books are. And it's a short list. But on the other
you only
side,
have 5 for 2023, right? Well, 5.
For 2023, we only have 2.
Oh,
and
2. Okay.
For 2024, we have 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we have a 6th title that's actually an Ascend title. Our first Ascend title comes out next October, which is book Connection by Asher Gottesman, which, we will be promoting just alongside all of our other books, right? So it's all, they're all part of the same list. And so really, that was the idea though, is that independent publishers is like, it's always going to struggle financially. And that's just a reality for independent publishers. And I've spoken to enough successful ones who've been around for a very long time. And unless you just have buku bucks laying underneath you, that's what independent publishing is. Whereas vanity publishing actually does very well and usually has high revenue. And so I really thought, like, what a beautiful marriage to be able to bring those two things together to be able to sustain the company.
But do you think of it? So now I want to make sure I'm choosing my words correctly. Because when I say vanity, so a lot of people say hybrid and vanity, and they mean sort of different things. When I say vanity, I'm talking about the sharks that are in the Facebook groups. Every time they hear that someone's writing a book, they're like, we hear about your book. We're in love with it. We'd love to, publish you. And then the author gets so excited, and then they take all their money and they do a crap job. And it's just a mess. So I don't think of vanity as being a good thing, but I do think of hybrid as being a good thing. So when I think of Ascend, I think of hybrid, but do you consider yourself vanity?
So, I think this is a good I don't know the difference personally. Do you?
No. The thing is that
I call it vanity when we think it's schlocky, and we call it hybrid when we think it's good.
100%. Like, I think of vanity as it's about the vanity of the publishing house. It has nothing to do with the author. That's why that's like where my word association is. So when I talk about independent publishing, I will often divide it into 3 categories: hybrid, vanity, and self. And the way I distinguish between self and hybrid is self, you're doing it yourself, and hybrid, you're paying somebody to do it for you. But either way, the onus is very much on you if you're working with a hybrid publisher, then you get to benefit from their expertise with cover design and interior formatting and uploading and all these sorts of things. Yeah. If you're self-publishing, you either figure that out on your own, or you buy, you get a course to walk you through it or whatever. I think of vanity as, but I had this discussion again with Neely Alexander. She was like, there's this vanity house and they're so great. And I said, I don't think you can use the terms vanity house and so great in the same sentence. And she was like she was going to die on the hill, but it was a vanity. So we just agreed to agreed to disagree. I love her to the end of the earth, but it's interesting because when you talk about it, what I never want to do is confuse an aspiring author into thinking that, right. Like if you, Kristen, were to say, oh, we have a vanity publisher, I would not want people to go, oh, Liz said no go on that, because I would recommend Ascend all day.
Yeah. I think, so I have, to be honest, and I've looked this up because I myself was confused, and I wanted to make sure that like we could have the deal with Simon & Schuster, but I've now found out there's other hybrid publishers that have distribution deals with Simon & Schuster that made me go, oh, phew. But, I think hybrid, either way, it's a publishing house where you pay to be published, right? I do think what I would say, what would make, to me, if I was going to define one over the other, a vanity publisher doesn't care what you've written, doesn't care about the quality of your writing, isn't really going to help you to make it the best book published, because they're just doing it. You're like, here's my manuscript. And they're like, awesome, put it in a book. And maybe there are some editorial services, and some do provide that, but they're not saying no to anybody.
Correct.
So I think that's what makes it a vanity. I think a hybrid, there's still some level of curation involved. Like, and that's true at Ascend. Like, there are books that we would never agree to.
Absolutely.
Whether because the topic doesn't make sense. Like, I would probably am not going to publish like highly academic texts on like physics. I wouldn't have an editor for that.
Mine is crypto. I'm like, if you send me a manuscript on crypto, it's not happening. Just do not send me.
Just don't. You're like, no, I mean, that's the same. I'd be like, I don't even know what crypto is.
I don't even know what it is, but I think it's passe.
I think it's passe. Like 1,000 times. I am not capable. I was terrible at physics. So I think that with a hybrid, there's a level of curation. So even though you were still paying to be published, so to speak, you're not just sending them a manuscript and they're like, hey, whatever. They actually care about the quality of your story. They care about the quality of the editing. They care about the book that's being published. And whether they're participating at any level of marketing or publicity, they have the intention for you to actually have sales that mimic your investment. And so yes, I mean, I think that's the difference.
I think we're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's why I had that because at first I was like, is this hybrid or is this vanity?
Right.
I do think it's fair to say it's hybrid because you're not, I mean, I wouldn't accept any manuscript. And as part of, I mean, that's what we're charging people for. I mean, we recognize a good bulk of the people we will be doing books for, we will be ghostwriting those books. I think that's a huge part of it, at least with the groups that we are likely to be working with. But also if folks want to do their own writing, that's great. They're going to be coached and edited through the process,
right?
Just as we do in all of our private coaching. So they're going to get that same experience of, they're not just going to be sent out into the Badlands and like, go write a book. You have no idea what you're doing and then come back to us. And then we'll decide what we think of that. If we think it's a good fit, both in terms of the topic and the person, then we will offer you the services that you need to write the best manuscript.
Yes. Well, and I think that people, to your point, people want to be happy with / proud of the company they're keeping. So the other authors, and you see that in the traditional space too, there's so much, not connectivity, but collaboration between author, whether it's promotion collaboration or providing blurbs, which would be promotion, whatever. It's like, there's something where when you can say, oh, I'm published by this company and so is this person.
Yeah.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
If on the flip side, they have to go, well, this publisher also published this pamphlet on the physics of crypto.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't make you feel quite
it doesn't feel aligned. Yeah. No, I mean, that's where I think like all of our Ascend titles, just as with most publishing houses, your imprint should always resemble your primary publisher. It shouldn't feel like, and then they were, publishing crypto over on the side. They feel very out of alignment with what we're doing at Rise Books. So, I mean, they share the same DNA. And I think that's where, that is our goal. And it's why it really began with Rise Books. And then out of that, the idea for Ascend came to be.
What has like most surprised you about this whole, having been in the space for so long and then starting your own 2 imprints, or really one imprint, or one house with one imprint? What surprised you the most, in a good or a bad way? But
yeah, I mean, so nobody's going to be able to see this. I mean, I also am not just the president, I'm also a client.
Right.
So over here.
That was my next question.
Hair Club for Men.
Right.
The visual here is me burrowing my face in my hands. So I said, I'm like, it's really, I think it's all, I mean, we'll see. I mean, I'm walking into it literally. Like, I have events starting in October. Was just putting together like the tour list. I'm doing an event in Bedford, New York, and Santa Monica, actually at Zibby Books. I think you interviewed Zibby. And then I'm doing Third Place Books in Seattle and Seminary Co-op 57th Street Books in Chicago. And like with that, media all the things, right? Like all the things are happening. And I think the surprising part of it is, what did I do?
Well, I mean, that's the funniest part. And I wanted to ask you, because I just saw the other day pre-orders. Did they just open for Live Through This? And I'll put all these links in the show notes, but didn't they just open?
They've been open, but I'm just getting around to promoting.
Okay.
I mean, that's really like my to-do list is truly, like I say, I'm like 3 months behind on my own book. But I did feel like, I mean, I made the right decision in doing that. I joked all along that like if I was going to be the first author, at least if I fucked it up really badly, she couldn't be that mad at me, because I was like, all right, like I can make all the mistakes with me. And I've really, and the other side of it though, is that it's actually created this idea of like, I would have gladly and should have been promoting all summer, but I also was exhausted. I had just come off a Kickstarter that was supposed to have happened like long before. Like everything kind of got delayed last year, and that was just life. And so energetically, I had to like break, and I mean, that's what I think that's the one thing I learned though about entrepreneurship. And I also have 2 children, an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old. So like I was thinking to myself the other day, if I was going to create any like Facebook group, it's going to be called Entrepreneurs with Toddlers, because
either no one will ever be on or everyone will be on all the time. It's one or the other.
It was a bunch of like butt dial texts, like people like melting down,
melting,
articulating the meltdown. So yeah, I mean, I've just really had to give myself, like, as an entrepreneur with a toddler, a lot of like, hey, like everything's just going to happen when it happens. Like, sure, like I'm just putting together like my readers team for my book. Should have done that in June. Oh, well.
I love that you say that, because, as an author who, coaches authors and runs a house and edits and all the things, like, I get it. I mean, I had written most of my books before I transitioned into the coaching and the publishing space. But now I won't like lead you, but do you feel like you can sort of partner with and speak to your authors from a more authentic place of understanding? It's like, I get it. It's very confusing why this thing isn't selling. Sometimes I feel the same way. Oh my God, it's okay that you're 6 weeks late on your launch team strategization. I figured out mine 48 hours prior to launch, whatever it is.
I think it's one, and I've always said this, having published a book that actually had a lot of energy around it, and in retrospect, being able to see how I failed that book, because I didn't know how to keep the promotion going, So, I mean, it's really funny. Like, I've been trying to get on the Today Show for Live Through This, and I was on the Today Show for my like silly dating book I wrote 10 years ago. And this is like the important book, and this is like a better book and a fantastic book. Like I was proud of 5150, but I did not feel the same way about it, where I'm like, no, this is like the must-read book. Like, it's everything. It's like, if you are an American woman, read this book.
Yes.
And so I could, and I haven't been able to like do that, but I had all those pieces on my first book. But what I didn't have was, I didn't have a community, and I didn't have social media was just getting going, but there were so many more opportunities on it then. And I did not know how to leverage them. I should have been out there really like hustling this book. And I got scared, and I like went under a rock. And I get that is actually a very natural response to publishing a book. And I think that I always tell people that, like, you think writing the book is hard, but if you've ever run like a marathon or any kind of race, I've actually done a marathon at one point because I'm a little crazy. And I remembered hitting that 13-mile mark and being like, oh, it's over, like
I wouldn't know, because that's one thing I will never do.
Yeah. And you're like, yay. And then you're like, oh God, there's 13 more miles. Like, and that's what publishing a book is. It's like thinking you hit the finish line and then being told you're only halfway done. And so, and you have to be like, let's do it, And so Yeah, and that's where I've just, I think the biggest piece is like be gentle, don't stop, and know that if you can't get up today, you can get up tomorrow,
Right.
And so I give myself that space that like can't do it right now, but that doesn't mean that I don't get back up and do it,
Right.
like,
Right.
And so it's just, and knowing that like, it'll be as it's supposed to be, and you get to learn whatever lessons that you learn from that experience,
Yeah.
But for me, the beauty of it is being a publisher is that whatever lessons I'm going to learn from this experience, I can very quickly pass them along to somebody else who's in their publishing process in my books. And I can learn as a publisher, like, hey, how would I have done that differently? And how can I help our authors both on Ascend and Rise to be their best author and their best promoter and their best creative in their work, both before, during, and after its publication. So,
I mean, we were just talking about that on the call right before I hopped on with you, how when you publish, for most people, it's such an anticlimactic day because it's like the 13-mile mark.
Yes, it is.
Right. And so people think like, oh, I'm done. And then, but you're not.
Yeah.
You're just going into phase 2.
Yes.
Which now and phase 2 is totally different. And for so many creative people, phase 2 is really uncomfortable because a lot of creative people, myself included, would love to just sit in the corner and write all day.
Yeah.
And then when we have to go out and talk about it, it becomes uncomfortable.
Yeah.
The term sales becomes uncomfortable.
It does.
And so, learning to lean into that and find fun ways and find a community with whom and with which you can grow and reach new people that's the second leg.
Yeah. And you have to, and I think the more prepared you are to know that, then it doesn't feel as awkward. It's like anything, like the more my husband is a skater, like a skateboarder. And he always says, like, you got to see the fall before it happens. You got to visualize.
I never do.
Yeah.
I never do.
And it's kind of the same thing. You got to like visualize this is what I got to do, and then prepare yourself for it, because it's not gonna be comfortable. Like it's gonna feel like you fell off a skateboard going 30 miles an hour. Like it's not like publishing a book is not actually a bunch of confetti. It's awkward. And I mean, I'm sure there's versions of it that are less awkward, but I think no matter who you are, no matter what you do, putting something out there in the world that exposes some interior life is always going to feel awkward. That is for sure. Like it's no matter what, you're flashing the crowd. And so there's always, no matter how comfortable you are flashing the crowd, there's always a moment of,
Yeah, because there's always somebody in the crowd. There's always some jackass who's like, no.
Yeah, totally. Someone's always going to throw a rotten vegetable at you.
There's always someone holding a tomato. Okay. It's just, so you got to anticipate that too. Oh my God. Thank you so much. I'm going to link all of your everything below, your book, all the stuff. I cannot wait until your book comes out. I cannot wait to get my hands on that. I feel like it's going to be whenever Zibby comes out with a new book, whenever Zibby Books comes out with a new book, I have it on my bookshelf. I feel like you're going to be the same. I'm going to have like my Zibby side and my Kristen side, and it's just going to be
awesome. Yeah,
it's gonna be great.
I love it.
I appreciate you so much for coming on.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much, Liz, for having me, and really excited to be friends now. So
I know, right? Yeah. I know. Me too. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode, this is your friendly reminder to follow or subscribe, leave a quick review, and share it with someone you know has a great story or message, but isn't sure what to do next. Also, remember to check out publishaprofitablebook.com for book writing resources and tips, and to see all the ways we can work together to get your book out into the world. Again, thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk with you again soon.